of clarity. Death of a good friend and an incredible activist named Kevin Zeese. And I don't have, it's tough because he just died yesterday, heart attack, rather unexpected or very unexpected, I guess, only 60 something years old. And I don't have all my thoughts together on it. So I can't claim this is going to be, hugely articulate and perfect, but Kevin Zeese was just an incredibly powerful activist, amazing, so positive, on the front lines battles of just so many issues. With his partner Margaret Flowers, they founded Popular Resistance. They're very active in the Green Party, but I first kind of met them and got to know them right before Occupy. They were creating their own thing called, it was in Freedom Plaza, and it was something Stop the Machine or something like that. But it was an occupation of Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. They had come up with the same idea as Occupy, basically unrelated, and the two just connected, dovetailed perfectly. And theirs was more focused on the war machine, a little more focused on the war machine, and Occupy was focused on the bankers. But once Occupy blew up, so theirs was scheduled for, I believe it was October 5th or somewhere around there of 2011, the year Occupy started. Occupy, the first night, was September 17th of 2011, just a couple of weeks earlier. And I was at the first night of Occupy in New York City, and I had already been asked to promote and perform at Kevin and Margaret's occupation in D.C. At Freedom Plaza, which was coming up in October. So then Occupy becomes massive. It took a couple weeks, but it just grows and grows and grows. And by the time Freedom Plaza occupation was starting, Occupy was all over. It was national. It was global. And so really it just came together perfectly. Their occupation was just aligned perfectly with a lot of what Occupy was saying. And so I was at Freedom Plaza, sleeping down there for a few nights and performing there. And Freedom Plaza actually ended up being one of the longest occupations. It lasted many months until they decided to violently and brutally evict the people, but that didn't happen for several months, as opposed to Occupy. I think it was only 2-3 months, maybe in November, early December, that they brutally arrested and trashed Occupy in New York City. Various ones around the nation lasted longer. But my point is just that, like Kevin and Margaret, and I'll talk more about Kevin, but we're at the center of this, and the center of so many things. The center fight of Medicare for all, and I don't know that we'd be talking about Medicare for all, or at least I don't know that it would be a national talking point on a weekly basis, a daily basis, of so many groups, so much pressure on the Democratic Party to actually get behind Medicare for all. I don't know that type of sentiment, I mean, there'd be a fight for universal health care, no doubt, but I don't know that talking point would be as prevalent without Kevin Zeese. They've been fighting for Medicare for all for so long. And the same goes for, I can almost say with certainty that we would not have pulled out of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, without Kevin and Margaret's work. I mean, you can go back and read the articles. They were against these massive trade deals that are just a huge corporate giveaway. TPP was going to represent 40% of the world's economies, and the American people had nothing to say about it. We didn't get to see it. It was incredibly secretive. Many of you remember this. And it was during Obama. Obama helped craft it with his mainly lawyers. It was mainly corporate lawyers that crafted it, 13 nations. And ultimately, because the anger and the fury over TPP grew and grew and grew, it became a talking point for Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump he didn't know what TPP was, right? Until he heard activists screaming about it. And so he hears that TPP is a thing. He hears Hillary supports it, and he hears Obama crafted it. So Trump, in his egotism and his he's actually savvy politically. He realized the way to defeat Hillary and to hurt Obama's legacy is to go after TPP. So on his speeches, he starts going after Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, when he gets into office, that means that A, it's good for his voters because he said he's going to pull out of TPP, and he gets to hurt something that Obama was working on. So second reason for Trump's ego to pull out of TPP. So Trump did that. Trump did not sign into Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, I get that many of you are right. Trump is a fucking asshole and a fascist and all these horrible things. But in this case, for the wrong reasons, he was right. And he pulled out of TPP, a massive corporate giveaway. And here's the thing. If Trump had more time and probably had more, useful people around him, he probably would craft his own trade deal, which would be equally horrible. But the larger point is that without Kevin and Margaret creating this surge against the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I mean, I challenge you to find articles against it that were as clear-minded and dead set against it as early as Kevin and Margaret. I don't know the year, but it was, it's back around the same time as Occupy, when it was first announced that such a trade deal was going to exist. And they were front and center on that. Also with net neutrality. Just phenomenal fighters to save net neutrality. They succeeded in saving it for a couple more years than we would have. They were in the head of the FCC's driveway. Like, them and 4 other people blocked the head of the FCC's driveway here in Washington, D.C. He couldn't get his car out because they were sitting there. He knew that manhandling them would not look good. So he ultimately had to stand there for like half an hour and talk to them, and then had to get a cab to work because he couldn't get to work. And it's a small act of resistance, of civil disobedience, a peaceful, nonviolent civil disobedience. But I don't think he would have protected net neutrality for the extra 2 years without that pressure. And ultimately, you get Ajit Pai in there a few years later, and he guts net neutrality. But still, this is, these are small wins, but powerful wins. So we had net neutrality for 2 extra years, probably largely because of Kevin and Margaret. And Kevin Zeese was just, I know many of you didn't know him personally, but he was such a powerful voice for positivity in the world of activism. It just, indefatigable and just, I don't know. It always amazed me, his positivity and his how sure he was that these battles could be won, even when it was so few people out there when it started. He and Kevin, I brought them pizza because they were camping outside the FCC, and when it started, it was the 2 of them. I think maybe they had 1 other person, but I think sleeping out there the first night, it was the 2 of them. And I went down there and brought them some pizza and stuff. And it's like 2 people sleeping outside the FCC. And you look at that and you think, how can this have any impact? How can this, you're going up against the most powerful forces in the nation and in the world. How can this have any impact? And yet they did, again and again and again. And Margaret, I'm sure, is going to continue his work, their work together. Popular Resistance was founded by Kevin and Margaret. For those of you who don't know Popular Resistance, please check it out, popularresistance.org. It's the best daily news read that I think you can find out there. They also were the force behind the Venezuelan embassy occupation, or they didn't call it an occupation, holding the space. Because occupation sounds like they were in a place they weren't allowed to be, when in fact the Venezuelan government had invited them to be there. But so the final 4 Venezuelan embassy fighters or defenders, as they call themselves, that were in there, this is in D.C., the Venezuelan embassy in D.C., the final 4 were Kevin and Margaret, Dave, Paul, and Adrian Pine, and the amount of moral certitude and just fucking energy that they had to sit there day after day. I don't know how long they were in there. I think 40 days or something. And they're in that. They cut off the electricity. The authorities did. They surrounded the place. You've got far right-wing kind of quasi-fascist Venezuelan people who want the U.S. to invade their home country. Some of them are Venezuelan, some of them are not. But many of them have been called out. Some of them work for Raytheon and places like that. But they're surrounding the outside of the embassy, playing loud, like awful disco music and shit like that, and strobe lights into the windows, basically like it was the Waco fucking encampment that the FBI was trying to get them out. And this stuff was encouraged by Secret Service. So these were not Secret Service doing that stuff, but this stuff. Oh, there, Lene just told me it's 37 days they were in the Venezuelan embassy, when they were kind of locked in there. And there was fights to get food to them or whatever. But they were and Kevin and Margaret were the force behind it, were the energy behind it, were the fucking moral soul behind defending that embassy against something that violated the Vienna Conventions, violated international policy and law, to take over another country's embassy. Embassies are supposed to be, sacred, right? That's why they couldn't arrest Julian Assange for so many years in the Ecuadorian embassy in London until Ecuador gave him up. It had to come down to Ecuador saying, go ahead into our embassy and arrest Julian Assange. And that's why the Brits couldn't get at him, the U.S. couldn't get at him, because embassies are supposed to be this sacred, they are international territory in the U.S. They are, an embassy in the U.S. is part of that other country. So Venezuela should have the right to their own embassy. And the fact that the U.S. said, no, we want to create a coup in Venezuela, so we're going to invade and take over your embassy, violates all international policy you can imagine. And law. And Kevin and Margaret fought and stayed in there for 37 days with the help of plenty of other people, but they were the core. Code Pink was very pivotal in that as well. But and it just incredible what they did. And there's too many other things to list that they have been part of. If I sat here and listed them all, everything Kevin's fought for, we'd be here for the next 4 hours. But just an incredible human being and such a massive loss. But I know that what he stood for and what he fought for is not going to slow down, and it's going to keep going. And I hope everybody subscribe to Popular Resistance. Go check it out. There's probably a way to there is a way, actually. There's a way to donate to Popular Resistance as well, popularresistance.org. So please do that. The fight now that they're focused on, one of them is Julian Assange. So you can learn more about that at popularresistance.org. Okay, guys, please share this video and keep fighting.